Hey, what up, everybody? Steve Breach coming to you this morning. On the way to work, I was listening to the end of the Observer radio with Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez, and they were going over the mailbag questions, and one of the questions revolved around Mr. Perfect winning the 1990 Royal Rumble, why it was rumored that he was going to win and why he didn't win, and Hulk Hogan did win. And basically, just to get through all the mumbo-jumbo, basically they were saying that Mr. Perfect should have won. He was getting the big push at the time, but it was right around that time that his big push was really cooled off. He did, end up being a big-time performer for the WWF at the time, becoming one of the greatest Intercontinental Champions in my mind. But he never won the big one. He was involved in the big feuds with Hulk Hogan. They did the house shows. He was in a big-time feud over all of 1990 on Saturday night's main event. I believe he was like in the main event of 3 of those shows involving Hogan at the time. In my mind, Mr. Perfect is one of the greatest performers that's ever been in the WWF. I think he's one of the top superstars that they've ever had, and a lot of times once wrestlers have passed on, they're sort of immortalized in some weird way. But as a kid, Mr. Perfect, honestly, him and Bret Hart were 2 of the guys that made me sort of notice, wrestling wasn't just about the storylines, that sometimes I found myself being really into matches that I really didn't care about if the matches were good, and it started having me pay more attention to, I guess you could say, the wrestling over the storylines. It just was basically like I was watching everything that was there, but if some sort of smoz happened, I loved it. If, some sort of, something with Hogan always had me, interested, because that was the main focal point of the whole, organization and all the shows and everything like that. But, honestly, in my mind, WWF is the reason that they killed off Mr. Perfect. Mr. Perfect was always, booked as, the main eventer. That was always sort of, he always talked the talk that he could beat Hogan, but when it came down to it for him to go face to face, he always was, a snake or a joke, pretty much. Like, he would always attack Hogan from behind, but then when it came down to the one-on-one confrontations, basically, he was a chicken. He always just sort of ran from Hogan. And then when it came down to it in the ring, they never got to have a one-on-one pay-per-view match. And, it always boggles my mind on why you wouldn't have done it if you were putting all this TV revolving around him, and then when it came down to it, you always put somebody else on the shows. I think it could have been a great match. Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect had great matches with everybody up and down the card, no matter who they were. He found a way to make it work. And Hogan's pretty smart. He's not the best wrestler in the world, but he at least knows how to control the crowd and can do things like that. But I don't know if it was my buddy Hulk Hogan, who it's hard for me to honestly say bad things about, but honestly, he was the top dog. He was probably honestly scared about losing his spot somehow, even though, you'd have to know that if it came down to it, if you lose one TV show, it's not going to kill you for a pay-per-view. You're not really losing the title to lose some sort of a non-title match, and it's sort of a smoz. But it's always really bugged me, and it's always really irked me that, when you look over, the people that have beat Hulk Hogan, the list is not that long. It's not that many people have been able to say they beat Hogan by pins or DQs or, even anything like that. Well, maybe there's a lot of guys that beat him by DQ, but Saturday night's main event, the Genius versus Hulk Hogan. And the Genius is the guy that beats him. It is Mr. Perfect's fault that Hogan got the count out. It is, and everything like that, but why would you not let, Perfect be the guy to let you beat you, to make people care, to go out and see you at the house shows and put you in a main event of a pay-per-view? It just, if you're going to let anybody beat you, why do you let the manager beat you? It makes no sense at all. I think everybody mostly remembers the scene, because I don't want to put it over like it was giving me, nightmares or something like that, but, the scene of Mr. Perfect and the Genius, when they stole the title and they took the winged eagle in the back and they broke it with the ring hammer, that was huge when I was a kid. That to me, even watching it today, it still boggles my mind on why it wasn't a main event thing. But honestly, when it comes down to why Mr. Perfect And, Kurt Hennig, the man who he is, was never a main eventer. It revolves around to that feud on Saturday night's main event with Hulk Hogan. Why they let the manager beat him, and why they didn't let anybody else in the world. Like, it doesn't make sense. Why let the manager beat him when you can let the ring guy beat him, and then that sort of gives him a stronger guy to work against. Hogan had no problem working with guys like Kamala and, Bad News Brown and, all these guys that looked big and bad and tough. But when it came down to it, really couldn't work. And he sold them for him like crazy. But for a guy like Perfect, who could do everything in the world, I don't know. It boggles my mind and it makes no sense. That's my little rant. And I don't give you much of me hating on Hulk Hogan because he is one of my favorite guys in the whole world with him and Triple H. But there it is for you. Have a good day, guys. Peace out.